All right, joining me now, Mollie Hemingway, editor-in-chief of The Federalist, Fox News contributor, Byron York, Washington Examiner correspondent, Mark Levine, former Democrat member of the Virginia House of Delegates. Mark, Joe Biden, I don't think is going anywhere. But can you deny that there is momentum building to push him out? Because they see the numbers that the New York Times is reporting, ABC News is reporting, CNN, pretty much every poll out there. And it is a nightmare for Biden.
Democrats often get worried about all kinds of things, but every Democrat I know firmly supports Joe Biden. I think they understand that he has the integrity to be president.
He has the integrity?
Yes, he does.
Oh, really?
Donald Trump today testified about how he and all his kids were committing fraud.
We're talking about...
It's a choice.
We're talking about Biden.
But an election
this is the guy that you say has the integrity to be president.
I'll tell you something
Where
else
has he ever demonstrated integrity? On what forum?
Look on the international
Invoking his
stage.
family's tragedy to actually, like, you know, empathize with someone from a huge natural disaster?
Laura, look on the international stage. Harry Truman, Ronald Reagan, Joe Biden. No one has stood up for democracy and Ukraine and Israel more than Joe Biden.
Everyone knows Ukraine is lost, Mollie. The foreign policy angle here is not to be understated. Even the New York Times, they're reporting on Ukraine. Even the head of the defense ministry of Ukraine basically said, we're at a stalemate.
Well, and it's worth remembering that when Trump was president, the media, and before he was president, the media said if he were elected president, we would have nuclear war break out. There would be a destabilization across the world. And instead, what you had was a very strong national interest-based foreign policy. We went after our enemies, but we didn't get embroiled in various conflicts. When President Biden took office, he said, America is back, baby. And he said he would assert this very...
The norms.
What happened to the norms? Mature foreign policy. We have had nothing but disaster globally. The world is on fire. We had a stable situation in the Middle East. He decided to prioritize Palestinian interests to help Iran become dominant again in the region, and we see how that's going. You have the Ukraine war, which has devolved into a stalemate. You have China continuing to rise. That has actually been one of the worst problems for his presidency, and that's just one of the problems for the Biden presidency.
And Byron, what's wild here is that Biden really is doing his best, I think, to put a good face on something that really isn't resonating. Watch.
I truly believe this country is about to take off because for the first time in a long time, we're bringing pride back to cities and towns all across America that have been left behind. I can honestly say I've never been more optimistic about America's future.
76% of Americans saying America is going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, you know, I think Biden's age is a huge problem, and it's not going to get any better. But I do think if things were going well in the country and the world, a lot of voters would say, you know, he's really old and he's doddering, but things are going pretty well. It's okay with me. Instead, there was a quote in the Times story, a voter in Pennsylvania who said the world is falling apart under Biden. And domestically, you look at the economy, people's standard of living has gone down, their purchasing power has gone down. You look at the disaster on the border spreading to blue cities up north. You see crime in many places, like here in Washington. And then you add to it a huge war in Ukraine, a new war in Israel. And that guy who said the world is falling apart under Biden, that was a reasonable way to look at things.
My mother would say, hell in a handbasket. That was one of those sayings back then, the hell in a handbasket. Mark, Stacey Abrams polls at about 3 points higher right now, which is mind-blowing to me, but then Joe Biden. But Stacey Abrams thinks Kamala Harris is getting too much criticism. Watch.
Do you think she would be receiving these same critiques if she was a white man?
No. We cannot ignore the misogyny and racism remain very prevalent in our politics. There's also just the difference. Our expectations are set for the traditional white male vice president.
Mark, obviously I was talking about Kamala polls 3 points higher. What is your thought on that? Do you think it's racism that is really at the heart of people's criticism of Kamala Harris?
I think Kamala Harris is an asset that the Democrats should use more. Absolutely. I mean, people need to show that she's there. She's a steady leader. And I think she can do the job. You know, when they talk about Biden's age, Biden and Trump are 4 years apart. And I'd be willing to bet that Donald Trump, given his health habits, is going to die a lot sooner than Joe Biden, who's a very healthy person.
Hoping Trump dies before Biden?
No,
really?
the point is that his age is not an issue. He's very healthy. But there's going to be two people running. An election is a choice. And of the two, Donald Trump is in more danger than Joe Biden.
Why are black voters moving to Trump?
Well,
How about
you're talking about whether it goes from 10 to 20% or something like that.
It's double. Are you saying that's not relevant?
The vast majority of black voters will support Joe Biden, and I do believe Kamala Harris needs to get out there and help support black voters.
Mark, I'm not trying to pick on you. Honestly, if I were in your position, I'd probably say the same thing. But this is the New York Times describes this as a potentially epical shift away from what the Democrats wanted to do on progressivism and toward a more multi-ethnic working class populism. That's in the New York Times. I mean, that's not a conservative rag.
I do think
correct?
it's populism. I think Donald Trump is the classic populist. That's why I want a steady hand, someone who respects democracy, someone who cares about American values. I mean,
5.6% decline in real median wages. I mean, is that
real wages are higher? Real wages are higher than they've ever been.
Income actually looked at with inflation, it's down.
And
that's not my number.
You see this with Trump dominating here. He has multiple bases of support. He has his enthusiastic MAGA supporters. He has people who just remember how nice life was under his presidency. He also has people who are extremely worried that Democrats are using law enforcement to go after political opponents and try to imprison political opponents. People worried about that kind of authoritarianism. This gives him three really strong bases of support, and you see it in the numbers reflected that younger voters are more likely to vote for him. Black voters are more likely to vote for him.
Byron, what do you think about that? Axios is saying that Democrats are quietly moving to succeed Biden. They're mentioning Newsom, Whitmer, Pritzker. They all have launched big PACs, and they're all kind of interesting, characters. I'm not sure it would make a big difference, but they're looking at it.
Well, first of all, black voters are moving away from Biden because they go to the grocery store. I think that's pretty clear what's going on. They go to the gas station, too. As far as any replacement for Biden, it's extremely hard to blast an incumbent president out of his seat for the party. And if he did, I don't think there's any way in the world Democrats could pass over Vice President Harris.
They can't leapfrog her.
She's the Vice President of the United States.
Let's just say, okay,
Joe
I agree with you. It's
Biden
probably
is the Democratic nominee.
Okay, I agree with you. That's probably the way it's going to go. But if it wasn't, how do they leapfrog against?
They're not going to.
They can't. Can they?
No, she's the Vice President of the United States. She's the constitutional successor.
People
and
are
she is
running
the
for
first
2028.
woman of
All
color
those
to
names
be
you
Vice
mentioned
President.
are looking at 2028.
Mollie, is there any way to get to Kamala Harris or get over Kamala Harris?
She's politically toxic, but they can't get over her now.
All right, panel. Great to see you all.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.